Tired of the hype about living the dream? It's time for truth. This is the place for tools, power, and real talk so you can create the life you dream and deserve. Your ultimate life. Subscribe, share, create. You have infinite power. Hey there, welcome to this episode of Your Ultimate Life, the podcast created specifically and only to help you create a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy by serving with your gifts, your life experience, and your skills, and taking action to create the change you want to see in the world. I'm grateful today to have a special guest, Peter McCammon, who is got a lovely Irish lilt, and I love listening to him in our little pre-talk. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Kellan.
You are welcome. Yeah, I'm delighted to have you. So I'm going to start with a question that I sometimes start with. I didn't on the last one I recorded, but I am today. So without being modest, I want you to tell us how Peter adds good to the world.
Oh. Well, I guess where I go with that, I suppose, is through my work. I guess is probably the main way that I add good to the world day to day. I work as a coach, and I work with leaders, owners of small, medium-sized businesses, and what I believe that I do is people come to me very often. Life is chaotic. They are struggling with stress or absence of clarity, or and life is it feels like more of a burden than a joy. And what I do with people, the impact that I have is to slow them down, is to help them to go inside, to acquaint themselves with the thinking that gets in their way, the narratives that they have about themselves or about the world that just aren't true, and particularly the narratives that they have about themselves, because so many people have at least, and this was my story as well, had so many negative beliefs. I had so many negative beliefs about myself, and I was working so hard to be somehow good enough, and because I believed I wasn't good enough, no matter how hard I worked, the belief always trumped my outcomes. And I meet people like that every day, who are working so hard to prove something to themselves or to prove something to somebody else, and they will never get there because there is actually nowhere to get to. And my job is to slow them down and help them to see that they are enough already, that they are whole and complete in themselves. And when they begin to get a glimpse of that, they are good to go, and they can go create powerfully in the world from that standpoint, as opposed to striving to be good enough so that someday, there's always a someday I will be good enough.
When I talk to people who are coaches or who work in this space, and I think of coaching sometimes as, I have lots of fun names for it, like the people encouragement business and the anxiety annihilation business and the obstacle obliteration business, and I have like a dozen of those, blind spot protection service and a bunch of other fun names. But coaches use that kind of language, get out of our own way, see who we really are. I use it. We all use that kind of language. And so my question to you is, where do you think the disease came from that makes us all, nearly all, or all infected with the idea that we're not good enough and we have to prove something so that?
Well, I mean, I think for me, it starts early. It starts when we are young, and it starts when, if you think about a young child, and watch a young child who is learning to walk, and they will pull themselves up on furniture and fall down, and they will take a step and fall down and get up again, and take two steps and fall down and get up again, and nothing will get in their way until they have achieved what they want to achieve. There is no fear of failure. There is no fear of taking action. There is just nothing that will get in their way. And we as children operate like that. And then life begins to send messages, and whether that's through our family of origin, the schools that we belong to, the teachers that we have, the I don't know, the churches that we belong to, the messaging we get from that, we start to get messages that seem to tell us that, well, we're good enough if we're not adequate unless we should behave in a different way. That kind of behavior is not appropriate, and we begin to get messaging that says who we are. We interpret these messages that we're not okay the way that we are, and then we adapt, we adjust, we develop thoughts about ourselves that are just not true, but we form beliefs that are kind of put them onto the category of who we fear we are, and we hold these beliefs, and we don't like them, we don't want them to be true, but we either consciously or unconsciously believe that they're true, and then we try and hide them. We put frosting over the nasty stuff that we don't want people to see, and that might be the watch that we wear, the clothes that we wear, the car that we drive, or the family that we have, or the job that we do, or it could be anything. It could be anything that we think hides all of that stuff. But I think that's where it comes from, and then we have these beliefs, and then we end up working really hard. We end up striving to somehow overcome those beliefs.
What, in your experience, maybe from your own personal experience, or maybe from someone that you've worked with, what has to happen before the frosting that we put on the fear melts? In other words, the frosting melts, and we're no longer either able to hide it or willing to tolerate it. What has to happen for that to come to pass?
Well, I maybe speak to that personally. And so I worked in business for 20 years. It was a family business. I was in a business that was growing. It was successful. It was a lot of fun. I was working with people that I knew and loved, and my brothers, my mum, my dad. And I managed to burn myself out trying to prove something to, I don't know whether I was proving it to myself or to somebody else, or to a combination of people. And so I think the first thing is awareness. I had no clue. I had no knowledge that this operating system existed, that was formed of a kind of a list of beliefs or ways in which I was kind of judging myself harshly, and they were the driving force that led to the behavior to somehow be good enough, or to be better, or to overcome whatever was going on below the surface that I wasn't aware of. And so I spent some time with a therapist, and became aware of thoughts that I had about myself that I had zero awareness. I mean, my wife would have said, back then, we're talking back to 2006, 2007, when this all went down. My self-awareness back then was very low, and so I guess self-awareness was the first point, and then I suppose really how I see that now is that all of the beliefs that were driving my system, those were just a list of ideas. That's all they were. They were a list of thoughts that I had come to believe, and what I've really developed for me, how I have kind of, and I'm not going to say overcome, but how life looks different now, and how it's not as driven by those beliefs, is that I've developed a new list of ideas, a new list of thoughts, a new list of possibilities in terms of an operating system call it an operating system upgrade, if you like, by which I live my life now. And I suppose if I had um, to in a nutshell say how that looks different is I was creating my outcomes for decades by judging myself harshly and using that as a rod to beat my back, to do more, to become better, to achieve more, to accomplish more. Um, and how it feels now is I come at creating what I want to create in my life through a lens of love. The degree to which I have learned to see myself as whole and complete already, as good enough, as not requiring, I'm not broken and needing fixed. I've learned to accept myself, to like myself, even love myself, and be loving towards myself. And whenever I use that as my rocket fuel, my energy, life feels very different, and is a whole lot more enjoyable, a whole lot more pleasurable, and what looks to be possible is way beyond what it ever looked whenever I was using judgment to create my outcomes.
So what it sounds like is like many, like probably nearly everyone, the engine we used to drive us was, I'm not okay. We got those signals from grades and parents and whatever system. I'm not okay.
Sure.
I have to fix my brokenness. And as I fix my brokenness and do better, then I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And what you've changed it into is I'm already okay. I can
Yeah.
still want something and go work toward creating it, but I'm creating it from a place of I'm okay here and I'll be okay over there. And I choose to paint this painting or build this house or do this thing in the world from a place of creative delight instead of a place of burdensome obligation to prove something.
Yeah, I think you've captured that really well. I love that. Yeah.
So that if someone heard you describe that, I've got to get rid of this DNA that's been woven in me from all these early life experiences and even late, like our society's built that way, from grades to trauma to childhood experiences to sports to jobs to everything where we're graded and judged. And so in order to get along and stay alive, we adapt to that. Getting rid of that deep DNA and replacing it with something that is as weird, ostensibly, as self-love and being okay here is a lot of work. And so you didn't fall up that mountain.
Mm.
So what made you start? You said you got burned out. You went to a therapist and said, I'm not willing to do this. Talk a little bit about the hike up the mountain, because for a lot of people, that's daunting. A lot of people start and quit. A lot of people gaze wistfully at those possibilities and think they can't have it. And there are few that are willing to sometimes crawl over the broken glass to get there. Talk a little bit about that.
I think, I think the journey has been interesting. I suppose the therapeutic part of it, that the first couple of years with a therapist were very helpful in just beginning the journey, the self-awareness process. And about maybe a year into that, I was sitting across from my therapist one day, and this thought came through my head: well, why don't you have a go in his chair? And basically that's what I did. I mean, it wasn't instantaneous, but within a year, I had left my family business. I had gone and signed up for a course to train as a therapist, and that took me on a journey. I mean, I did a basic training. I started working with clients in a voluntary capacity in a community center not far from where I live. I spent a couple of years there. I took further training in areas that I was really, really interested in. I wanted to understand trauma. I wanted to understand relationships, and I guess the way I approached that was to go and get training, and to go and get understanding, and to actually have, which led me to be in conversations with clients who were struggling with trauma or struggling with relationships, and living through that. And I mean, I just learned a massive amount from that. And then I suppose my journey from then has just continued to be one of where I became fascinated by, I suppose, my own potential, fascinated by what was possible if I stayed on this journey. And I've kind of applied that to myself. The thing that fascinates me probably more than anything is that really lights me up is just the whole idea of growth and change and transformation and what's possible. And what I feel like I'm I'm the project in so many ways. I love that. I mean, in fact I've come to love that, because I mean, I went from pardon me, but at the age of sort of 38, before I hit my burnout, I mean, I had grown up in quite a, I live in Northern Ireland. It's quite a religious culture, and I was part of a religious community for all of my life up until that point in time. And I mean, to be honest, at that stage, I thought I had life sussed out. I thought I had figured it out because of what I knew about, religion or God, or, and my burnout was all the evidence that I ever needed to realize that I didn't know anything. Well, I did not know what I thought I knew. And I guess that sent me on a journey of discovery that I'm still on. And I've applied that, and I suppose since I became curious about coaching and got into coaching, that took me in a whole other direction, in terms of not so much looking back at my past and why things happened, but looking forward into the future and what would be possible. And when I apply that kind of passion to my work, to my clients, to my relationship with my wife, to my relationship with my extended family, to my work with my clients, to my health and fitness, I mean, all sorts of changes have taken place. I mean, I'd say as a person, I bear very little resemblance to the person that I was, just a few years ago. I'm just a constant work in progress, and I guess I see myself as just living experience that change is possible. For people that tell me, I can't change, this is just the way I am, I don't buy it.
Yeah, no, you weren't born that way. It's a set of stories that you created from your experiences.
Yeah.
I call it a context straitjacket. And your context is your BD, beliefs, definitions, experiences, expectations, and perceptions.
Yeah.
And together they form the straitjacket that you live inside until you figure out you don't have to.
Yeah.
And you're willing to do the work to create it. And the thing that's interesting is the level of excitement you demonstrate in terms of each thing you see seems to wake up a new interest in exploring what else is possible. And, from where I think, where I stand, a counselor, a shrink, is about fixing what's broken, and a coach is about taking what's whole and creating, accessing the limitless possibility. Like, if I break my leg, I go to the doctor and get it fixed. If I want to go to the Olympics, I don't go to the doctor. I get a good coach and go apply the things that are required to level up in that way. So you view yourself consistently and completely as a product of the product.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. It's one of the most powerful parts of this. And one of the things I say is a coach that doesn't have a coaching relationship or in a coaching relationship is a fraud. And I know that sounds harsh, but the point of that is, if I, as a coach, or you, I'm not actively working to get the insights and get the benefits of this growth process, then it limits my ability to help those who
Mm.
come to me for help.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I mean, I've been in a coaching relationship. Currently my coach is a guy called Ankush Jain, and I've been working with Ankush for 4 years now. And I mean that's just been an incredible journey. I've worked little bits and pieces with a couple of other coaches as well, and that, you know, they've worked specifically in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
I remember before I met Ankush, I read somewhere, I think it was in a book called it was a book by Steve Chandler and Rich Litvin, and I think called The Prosperous Coach. And I think it was in that book I read, why would you be a coach and not have a coach? And I was like, oh, it was like a light bulb moment. Of course,
Right.
you know, it's like, why would I had a friend who used to say he had this little phrase. He talked about, you know, you got to smoke what you're selling, and for me, it was like that kind of a moment where I realized that I was missing out on an opportunity, and I wasn't actually, you know, I wasn't smoking what I was selling. And since then, I've never been without a coach since then. And you know, the shifts and changes and the insights within me have just, they're just, I'm not saying they're constant, but they're just, it's a very ongoing process, and one that I personally really, I just absolutely love it, relish it.
You know, one of the interesting things you mentioned earlier that I also see is that this isn't just about the coaching profession and getting paid to be a professional at a particular thing. And, you know, I know Ankush and have for many years. He, you know, his goal is to change how the coaching profession is
Yeah.
perceived and elevate it in a way that it gets the kind of respect proportional to the possibility. Like you go to a brain surgeon and they can do great things. And I say, ooh, brain surgeon. And there's no greater, I mean, in coaching, in other words, bringing out the best in people, allowing people to
Mm.
see and access and create according to their highest good and
Mm.
possibility has endless, limitless potential because the ripple effect goes on. Um, when you like people hear you or me or somebody talk about limitless potential and all this thing, and it affects my relationship and my health and my everything, blah, blah, blah. And it all sounds wonderful. And it is, and it's true. But it can be heard with the idea of, yeah, but I can't do that. Yeah, but not for me. Yeah, it might be all right for you. What do you what do you start with if you sense some sincerity in a person, but
Mm.
their life experience has been such that they don't know how to address this because it's not for me or it won't work for me. It's just another version of I'm not good enough. So,
Mm.
what do you do? Where do you start with that idea so you can get someone to sort of unclench from that feeling?
Yeah, I suppose I suppose where I really begin is what I'm wanting people to see is, and it may be the first time they've ever heard it, but it goes back to this idea that you're not broken. You're actually not flawed or defective or in need of repair or any of these things. The ideas that you have around that and needing fixed or and I guess my conversation with people in the earlier stages tends to be around that, but I'll use it's I suppose it's whenever I talk with somebody, it's quite soon after they start to speak that their language begins to give pointers to me about things that they believe about themselves. You know, so you know, somebody might say, yeah, well, that's not going to happen for me, or somebody might even sometimes just how they speak about something, or how they speak about someone, and how something's not going to happen, or how something feels or looks fearful to, they're experiencing fear around something. And it's usually, I'm not saying easy, but it becomes apparent that they have thoughts and beliefs and ideas about something that's really personal to them, or relevant for them in their life or their work or their relationships, or in some way. Um, and I'll usually, I suppose at that point, just tease things out with them by asking lots of questions that go something like, well, it sounds like you think this, or it sounds like you might believe that. And I guess I'm just looking for language that might resonate with them around a belief that they hold, or an idea that they hold to be true, either about themselves or about the circumstances that they're trying to work through. And it usually doesn't take that long for people to begin to see that, most of what they really firmly believe as absolute truth is just an idea, it's just a thought, and that, um, we don't have to believe our thoughts. There's kind of a, yeah. I mean, I think this was interesting for me when um, I had this realization that, I have thoughts, but just because I have a thought does not make it true. That was a big moment for me.
It's exactly the same. I have a client right now that I've had for 10 years, and he's gone from being afraid of a lot of things and, contemplating serious things like suicide and everything to, being a part of a partnership with a big company that they're ready to see pretty quick in a year. So a $300 or $400 million buyout. And part of that success, yeah, I know it's exciting for him. Part of that success is his willingness to just go there.
Yeah.
I used to believe, and she said this, I used to believe that because I thought it was so, and just accepting the idea that it's just a thought was a huge change. Just exactly the language that you just used.
Yeah. So I think where I tend to start is that kind of an area, and I suppose where I always start with, on the inside, I'm absolutely certain, that they are not broken. I know they are not broken. So that comes out in conversations very quickly, in terms of how I see them, and what so that well, there's a guy that you and I both know called Steve Hardison, who talks about an idea that is along the lines of our language creates. And
Mm-hmm.
and I know when I use language like that, it impacts people. And it's not that it just changes them overnight, but as I begin to talk to them as if they are somebody that is not broken, the possibility that that might be true begins to take hold. And over a period of time, or over a number of conversations, something can begin to shift and change, and the idea that they might not be broken becomes, available to them. The idea that they, I talk to people about, just the fact that I really believe we all have greatness within us. That's a phrase that I will use with lots of people, and because we're all different, that greatness looks different in every different, in every human being, because we're not all, um, we can't all be basketball players or rugby players or soccer players, or we can't all do everything, but we have things that we can all do. And there's something in us, in our DNA, or in our wiring, or in the energy that we came from, that created us, that I really believe that, creates the possibility of greatness within us. And so when I hold on to that and use that language, and when my clients have somebody in their corner that just does not deviate from that position, something eventually begins to shift. Something eventually begins to change, because of the relationship that gets built, and the strength of belief that I have in them about what's possible for them.
I love that. Thank you. I have a little triplet. I love acronyms, and I've created my whole language. As you know, I've written a whole bunch of books and all that stuff. One of the things is the phrase DCP, which stands for Divinity, Capability, Possibility. And it starts with the idea that that place, however you think of the divine, that created you.
Yeah.
And that's an immutable fact. There's nothing you can do or not do to change that. That simply is. And just understanding that idea by itself is powerful. But the next, and not but and the next step is, if you came from a divine source, then that DNA is in you, which means you have the capability that is associated with that. And just to allow that thought to just sit there in various ways. So I came from a divine source, and I have that capability within me. And then I have the choice, and that's just a fact. Came from a divine source, which means you have this capability. And we have the agency or choice to express that in any possibility that we want in terms of that creation that you talked about. And so I enjoy the description, because we live in a world that ignores and sometimes actively stomps on that sort of feeling. You're nobody, you're nothing, you don't have this and that, you can't this, that, and the other. And that's simply and verifiably not true.
Yeah.
If we'll slow down, which is something you said earlier, long enough to hear that. And it's one of the reasons I ask, like, your story in the mountain, because you here now in this episode, you have that. You're a divine being. Your capability was there, and that set of experiences tugged on the heartstrings and the hope strings of your being to allow you to then consider, what if I go in their chair? And then you did that, and then said, well, there's even more. And then you moved to this idea of going from, I got a broken leg, to I'm healthy, to the other side, which is I'm healthy, to infinite possibility. So I love that thought. I want to change directions for a second.
Sure.
Or for a few minutes. What role in this awareness that you're waking up in people, and this newfound ability to believe something that was always there, what role does forgiveness play in this process for you?
Well, for me, it's a massive role to play. I went through this is something I have only learned in the last just over 2 years, probably. I went through a process 2 years ago with my coach Ankush, where we worked to create something that I call my document. Mm-hmm. And my document is a list of declarations that I show up to life by every day. I live my life by. And the process that led me to have this list of declarations involved me starting with a list of all of the different ways in which I judged myself harshly and had criticized myself for so many years. And the process of getting from one list, the list of judgments, to the new list, which is a list that is full of love and compassion and creativity and curiosity and possibility, and the energy of that's the energy of my document as I see it. What allowed the language of my document to emerge was a process where I progressively let go of or forgave myself for all of those judgments. And I didn't know that was a thing. I grew up thinking that forgiveness was something that I had to do or give to other people who had done something to me that I didn't like or that I thought was wrong. I had no clue that there was a role for self-forgiveness in my life. I I had either missed that lesson or never heard it, or it wasn't taught to me. And what I have found, Kellan, is that the freedom that exists on the other side of self-forgiveness, it's a feeling that I had never experienced ever in my life. I'm 56 years old, and I did not. I had never experienced anything even approximating or approaching the kind of freedom that I have felt in the last 2 years, until I started to forgive myself for everything that I had been holding against myself until the age of roughly 54.
I want to be grateful to you. I am grateful, expressing gratitude and acknowledgement for sharing that sort of thing. I spent the first 52 years of my life chasing the brass ring and getting it, in high positions and this and that. And when I was 52, I had a divine intervention that caused me to change directions completely and literally walk away from everything and start over. And the life behind me was a battlefield, a mess, a disaster. Broken relationships, broken promises, addiction, just a mess. And so that you can believe and know that the amount of self-loathing and self-judgment and so forth that you referred to was as high as you can imagine.
Mm.
And so that I agree with you completely and support it. The idea of the learning of, the feeling of, and the continued practice of
Yeah.
self-forgiveness is essential to wake up the truth
Mm.
of possibility in others. And it's funny because my response to everything I learn is to write another book, because I have to write about all the things that I've learned. And so I've written 20, and the one that Steve did the forward to was number 20. And I've got 5 more actually in the queue for the next 2 or 3 years. But the one before that was, guess what? Forgiveness, a journey of courage to a place of freedom and power.
Yeah.
Because of the discovery you talked about. And I just thought, I have got to write about this truth to share with others.
Yeah.
How do you help someone begin to forgive themselves when they're so convinced? Like, I have a YouTube channel, and the video that's gotten hundreds of thousands of views and lots of comments forever and ever and ever is a video on how to forgive yourself. And lots of the comments are, I can never forgive myself for, and it doesn't matter what comes after that. So how do you help wake up in someone the glimmer of hope that it's not only possible, but it is appropriate, and it is required, and it is powerful and liberating to do that thing?
Well, what I see is that the forgiveness for me is not about it doesn't start with forgiving. It's not about them forgiving themselves, or it wasn't about me forgiving myself for what I had done. It was about me forgiving myself for the judgments that I had imposed upon myself. That was where I found the freedom, because what seemed to happen was um when I was able to forgive myself for the judgments, how I saw myself, um, that started to change, and as I started to change, um, I guess it was interesting, because my life, whenever I came across this process, my life didn't look like a train wreck. Whenever I had my burnout, my life didn't look like a train wreck. My life always, from the outside, it looked good. It looked like things were going great. It looked like, this guy has got everything that he could possibly want. I had a great marriage. I had great kids. I had a great work. I had a great job. I was, looked like I was comfortable in my life, and inside I was miserable. I was unhappy in many ways, and so the unhappiness that I felt was not because of things that I had done or not done, and I'm not trying to say that I was perfect or something like that, but the forgiveness piece for me was about letting go of the judgment. The beginning of this shift for me was seeing that the judgments that I was holding over myself were what were getting in the way. And I guess how I work with people on that is I mean, so many of my clients now, I have them create a document. If they're up for it, that is the first thing that I will do with my clients, and we will have conversations about, I'll send them resources and talk to them about the document, and I'll send them stuff to read, and I'll share my own journey and story with it, and we'll have a conversation around the whole, you're not broken, and the document for me, the way I see this is that the creation of my document was me shifting from seeing myself in a terribly, well, I'm going to say it this way. My list of judgments, their foundation was in fear. My document, my list of declarations, the foundation is in love. So this is a journey from fear to love. That's how I would define this in a sentence. And my, I suppose my life now, in terms of how I see it going forward, is that I show up every day from a perspective of love towards other people, love towards my clients, love towards anybody and everybody that I come across, and what that has led to is, it's like nothing has changed, but everything looks different.
I couldn't agree more, and I love it. And I love that expression, and I agree with you. That's the first thing you have to do, because no matter what you create in your life, if people often come to me, they want to make more money in business and that sort of thing. But no matter what you create, you can create it from a place of trying to prove something, or a place of fear that you're not this, that, and the other. And when you do that, it always feels inadequate. And the reason it does is because it is.
Mm.
And when you create from love and possibility, then it's enough, even if it didn't go where you thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
And so creating that place, people, like I said, people come all the time for business, money, this and that and the other. And, it turned, and I know you know this, after just a conversation or two or three, the only thing you're ever talking about is who they're being, how they're showing up in the world to do whatever the heck is they're doing.
Yeah.
And that affects what is accomplished and how it feels afterwards.
Yeah, completely. And I think one thing to add to what I said is just the in terms of that where we come from, our way of being, to come from fear, or come from love, in terms of our approach to creating what we want to create in life. Love is so much more powerful than fear.
And it's more fun.
Oh yeah, way more fun, but also way more powerful.
It is. No question about that. But it's not stodgy or grumpy or downtrodden or anything else. It's more powerful and more fun, more joyful.
Yeah, yeah. I look. I want to. I want to do things in life, but I want to enjoy my life, and I do. I love my life right now, and I heard a phrase, and I don't remember where I heard it, but it was somebody was talking about a life that I don't need to take a holiday from.
Yeah.
And I feel like I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I do take holidays, but it doesn't feel, I don't need to get away from the life that I have to take a holiday. It's not, oh, I need a holiday. I love to take a holiday and, go to the sun or whatever it is. But I can get up every morning and I'm excited about whatever's in the calendar that day, whether that's going to the gym, client meetings.
Yeah, no, I share that. And I love
that. I love it all.
So what didn't I ask you about that you want to share?
What did you not ask me about? it's interesting. One of the things that when people talk to me, and I haven't talked about them, but so I am now. People will very quickly see or realize how important my family is to me. I'm married to Julie, or Jules as I call her. We've been married for 33 years. We were together for 6 years before that. We met when I was 17. And we've got two incredible kids. They're 30 and 28 right now, and they're both in Australia. And I suppose I want to say that a massive foundational piece of my life is my wife and my kids. My family are really, really important to me. And I've accomplished loads in my life in terms of business and coaching and as a therapist, and helped loads of clients. And I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for what I have with my family. My family is massive to me, and I guess I acknowledge my what I learned from my parents about family. And that has been a massive, I guess, a foundational part of my world and my life. And yeah, so that's something that we haven't really talked about. But in terms of, if you want to know me, you've got to know that's really, really, really big part of the equation.
Where can people find out about you if they want to follow you, read more of your stuff? Do you have a book you've written? Do you have a blog? Do you have products? What do you do? Do you have any of that kind of stuff?
I don't have a book. People can find me in a couple of different places. The best places to find me are on Facebook and on LinkedIn. I have a weekly newsletter that I write that goes to my email list. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if there will be show notes for this, but we could give information about how to contact me through those. But my newsletter, all the back issues of that I've been only writing it for about 6 months, so they're only about.
Where do I go to get on your list? So if someone wants to get on your list, what do they do?
They send me a message through either Facebook Messenger or LinkedIn.
Okay, so I just want to make sure
Peter McCammon. If they search for Peter McCammon, my name is not a very common name. You will find Peter McCammon on Facebook or LinkedIn. And cool. If you shoot me a direct message, I will send you a link that you can subscribe to my my newsletter and connect with me that way.
Cool. I want people to be able to do that. Thank you for sharing your heart with us today.
It's been
Peter, I appreciate
an absolute pleasure.
I want everyone to listen to this again, and I want you to take advantage of Peter McCammon's offer to get on his list, to explore the thoughts of someone who's regularly involved in personal growth, who's overcome their own pile of obstacles, and who is willing to hold you in your highest possibility with the eye of love and creation. Both those things will help you to create your ultimate life.
Never hold back and you'll never ask why. Open your heart and this time around.
Right here, right now. Your opportunity for massive growth is right in front of you. Every episode gives you practical tips and practices that will change everything. If you want to know more, go to KellanFluckigerMedia.com. If you want more free tools, go here, YourUltimateLife.ca. Subscribe. Share.
Stand with your heart in the sky and your feet on the ground.